Hello, and welcome to Moco Says Create. Creating is hard. Get inspired and learn with us. I'm your host, Monica Maldonado, and I'm joined by my co-host,
Corey Willis. Welcome,
Yay.
everyone.
And together we make Moco.
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 Which is boogers in Spanish.
Yes.
Yes, we know.
We know.
We know it.
But it's also Mo from my name, Monica, and Co from your name, Corey. So we just put them together and made a booger.
Oh. Gross.
And welcome to episode 3.
In this episode, we're going to be talking about how to hook your audience.
Let's hook them in.
Let's hook them in and then reel them. But reeling is another stage. We're just talking about get that hook in.
Yes.
So the idea here is, and this we're going to cover how this works in different art forms. But the idea is, if you want to put your art out there, the point is you want someone to experience it.
Yeah.
Whether you want them to read your story, to stare at your painting for a while, you need to do something to draw them in. Mm-hmm. If you just have this thing and don't really think about it and just put it out there, people probably won't care. So you do need to put some effort into drawing them in.
Yeah, grabbing their attention somehow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we're going to start with how this applies to writing, because some other like inspiration and things kind of is more overall, whereas this we need to break it up into like how this works with writing, how it works with music, with art.
And I feel like usually the way I've heard it is the writer's hook, just from hearing you talk about your writing things sometimes, or even like in my experience in school when we had to write essays or had to write narratives, whatever, it would always be, what is your hook? What's your writer's hook? Yeah. So when you were saying, oh, let's talk about this and how you do it in painting, I'm like, there isn't really a
Well,
painter's
it's not
hook.
called the hook. It's about like emphasis and contrast.
And
intersecting lines. So like we'll get into that later. It's a similar concept as far as like you're trying to draw in the audience and point them in a direction. Yeah. So we'll get into that in the second half.
I'm excited to what you have to say about writing, because I know nothing about writing. So maybe I'll learn something.
Maybe you'll learn something. So I'm going to start with a example here of this is the beginning of a novel, and I'm sure most of you will recognize it once I read it.
Which one is it?
Well, I'm going to read it first, and then I'll
okay.
see if people know what it is. Marley was dead to begin with. That's the beginning of the novel. That's the first line. Oh. And it begs so many questions that like you have to keep reading. Yeah. It's like, starting right off the bat, this guy's dead. Like, how did he die? Why does that matter?
Who's Marley?
Yeah, who's Marley? You want to know more.
Yeah.
So that's the main thing here is you want the reader to wonder, to ask questions. They don't need all the answers. They need them eventually, usually. Yeah. But for the hook, you just want to pique their interest. Yeah. Kind of make them question, like, why does that matter? And I just, that one has always stuck with me as one of the best. And it's surprising for how old that book is. You kind of think of, like Charles Dickens. Oh, I guess I should say did you say? It's
no,
Christmas
I didn't.
Carol.
That's why I was like, oh,
by
what
Charles
is it?
Dickens. I think
I'm pretty sure most
that
people
one.
would. I've never read it, so I had no idea that was the first sentence.
Oh, okay.
I've only seen the Mickey Mouse version.
Yeah, they usually quote it in the cartoons in like the Muppet Christmas Carol.
Oh, they quoted it?
They changed it to the Marley Brothers.
Oh.
Were dead to begin with.
Oh.
So they did the same idea, just because it's instead of being just Marley, it's the Marley Brothers.
Gotcha.
In the Muppet Christmas Carol, which is the best version of the Christmas Carol, in my opinion, in film form. Like, I dare you to present a better one. It's not possible.
No, I think that one is the best.
Yep.
But that's really cool. That was the first sentence, and it already has my attention. I've never read it. I want to read it now.
Now you want to read it.
Yeah.
So I just threw one of mine in here, too, just to be a dork.
Which one?
Each house in yellow was red.
I love that one.
And yellow is initial capped. So it's like
a pronoun.
A pronoun, exactly. So, like, that's a place, probably. So every house in yellow is red. You're just like, wait, what? Yeah. So what it does is it kind of gives you the tone, because it kind of gives you a children's book vibe, or like a rhyming kind of thing, and that sort of sets the tone for what it will be like.
Yeah.
And that's the next heading we're going to get into is avoiding clickbait, essentially.
Clickbait.
What you don't want to do is lie to your audience about what the book is.
Oh.
Like if you start with a dream, that's clickbait. If you start with she was running for her life from the knives flying at her that had eyeballs, and they're flying at her, and then she woke up.
Oh.
Then I would stop reading.
But
because that's so lame.
Like people use that in movies.
Yeah, they use it all the time, and it irritates me.
Really?
100% of the time.
Yeah.
Like unless it ties into the plot. Where like there's some stories where dang it, what was I?
What were you watching?
From something I was watching. It wasn't fake.
When we were playing Psychonauts?
Psychonauts, there we go. So Psychonauts, these dreams are not actually just dreams. They're like their psyche connecting and bleeding into each other's. So that's an example of these dream sequences that are like actual things happening. So like things like that, like those work because that's part of the plot.
It applies to the what's going on with the characters and the story and everything.
Right. Some authors use it as a cheap way to like have something exciting at the beginning.
I see what you're
when
saying.
nothing is actually exciting
so,
about the story.
So like they never even go back to it.
Right,
like
exactly.
it just happened and that was it. It's over.
Yeah, exactly. They have a dream sequence about a girl being kidnapped and stabbed or something, and then she wakes up and everything's fine, and then they just go on with this boring story. It's like, that's lame. I
see.
So don't clickbait because you will lose a lot of people. Mm-hmm. You want to be honest about what the story's like. Now, if it was like a preview of the sort of tone of things what will happen later, maybe.
So if it applies to the story, if it has something valuable in it.
Exactly.
Okay.
It has to pay off eventually, otherwise it feels really lame.
Yeah.
So what the hook should do is should give the tone, it should give an interesting question, and set up what's going to happen right then. Mm-hmm. And one of the other key elements, it should be very short.
Gotcha.
So that example, Marley was dead to begin with.
Yeah.
It's so short.
Sentence.
Because if you have this like run-on multi-comma sentence, you're going to lose most people. I shouldn't say most. You will lose some people if you don't keep it short and simple. Like you can expand on it after that first sentence. The first sentence is just to hook them in, make them interested to keep reading.
Yeah.
So yeah, be honest, be short, and make them ask questions. Like those are the key things when crafting a hook in writing. Now, in literary fiction, it's generally frowned upon because it's like, oh, this is high art. I don't need to hook people in. Those who are sophisticated enough to read my story will not need it.
I love the facial expression you had. I needed to record that.
Hoity-toity.
Why didn't we record that? Anyway, that's a load of what you were saying?
Crap.
Oh.
So it's complete garbage.
Yeah.
Because I've read plenty of literary fiction that had me hooked at the beginning. I think it's reacting to those cheap ones, where it is sort of clickbait. It's like you don't need to do something like that with a dream sequence or something silly like that. But you still need a hook, even if you're literary fiction, even if you're trying to be high art. You still want to pique their interest.
Yeah, you want to grab their attention.
Or at the very least, what it should do is tell you, like, what kind of story this is going to be. Or, again, still making the reader ask questions. Be like, I wonder what that means. Or like, oh, it's this situation.
Yeah, because then they're really involved in it. And they want to... I love reading stories like that when I'm just totally into the story. And I feel like I'm there. And I feel like I'm... Like, if it's about a group of characters or something, I feel like I'm in that group. I'm with those kids, like, being involved in whatever we're trying to figure out, whether it's mystery or whatever. I love those kind of stories.
Right. And
that's really helpful for me to just stick with it and want to actually finish the story.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right, so I came up with some silly examples here of a good hook versus a bad hook. Or even just like, this is just the first sentence, which one hooks you and which one doesn't.
Okay.
So the first one is, Tom went to the graveyard to see his mom's grave. Would you keep reading that story? Maybe, maybe not.
Well, because, I mean, it's in a graveyard, so I'm like, why did he go to the graveyard?
Right, but how about
But it's pretty simple.
Tom went to the graveyard and saw his mom sitting on her own grave.
What?
Exactly. It makes you
I
question,
had to
like,
think about that twice.
yeah, I mean, this is just an example I came up with.
Yeah.
So the idea is you ask a question of, like, is she reanimated and sitting alive on top of her grave? Did someone dig up her body and prop her up in a chair on top of the grave? And the next sentence will tell you.
Yeah. So what if you had the first hook? Like, you're like, but this is my story. Is it just gonna be a boring story? Like, should you start over and add something more interesting? Like, how would you fix that hook? I don't know if we'd...
Well, you're saying that
like, the first hook, he was like, oh, he's at a graveyard.
I mean, you can always add an interesting angle to it. So you're saying, like, so if it was Tom went to the graveyard and that was it,
Yeah.
and there wasn't any supernatural thing happening. That's the thing. You don't need to add something fantastical.
Yeah.
You just need to add an interesting twist.
Oh, so twist it up in some kind of...
Twist it up in some way, like describe why he's there, or something that's interesting about it. Just bring up extra details around the situation that make it more interesting. Because if that's all it is, if that's the beginning of your book, just someone visiting a graveyard and that's it and nothing, he just puts flower on the grave and leaves, you're not starting the book at the right place.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah.
Like, you're probably not starting at the right place. Like, you should be doing it where he's on the way to the graveyard and he's buying flowers and he's talking to this girl at the counter and you have this interaction between them. You know what I mean? So there's, like, so many different places you could start around that are probably more interesting than him just going to a graveyard and putting flowers down.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess that kind of does tie into the hook as far as, like, knowing where to start your book. And you should start in a place that does pique their interest.
Yeah.
And that is not the inciting incident. The thing that, like, drives the plot forward needs to be before that, but you still want to make people ask some questions in their head to want to keep reading.
Very cool. I feel like I'm being lectured, but in a good way, like about writing.
Like you're listening to a lecture.
Yes,
not
listening
like you're being
to a
lectured. Monica, stop it. Bad Monica.
Sorry. Nice. Well, thank you for that. Were there any more points you wanted to cover?
I think that's it. I think we can move on to the artsy fartsy.
art side.
I'm a painter. I'm so cool.
Hey.
I work in visual mediums. Let's see what you do.
I don't talk like that, okay?
Okay.
Okay, for the record, that's not me. I wanted to go back to your second example, though, before we move on, when you were bringing up the topic of the hook in writing, and your example of the each house in yellow was red. I remember when you shared that with me, and I had to read that like 5 times. I had to read that like over and over to actually understand what you were saying. I'm like, wait, each house in yellow was red. What? And I'm not very good at reading, at comprehension at all. Like, I need to read things over and over.
Yeah.
But this was such a simple sentence. And I'm like, okay, wait, I need to make sure I got this.
I think most people had that reaction when they read it.
Yeah, but it really did get my attention because I'm like, what is he talking about? I need to know exactly what yellow is. And it was a good story, by the way. You need to do something with it.
Yeah, I should finish that one day.
Anyways, so what I wanted to talk about was the artist, I guess, in the artist perspective of what a hook is, or how to grab the viewer's attention with your painting. You can do so many things, and I feel like also it can be subjective sometimes. I guess kind of like what you were saying.
It's all subjective.
Yeah, like what you were saying with writing. And it's like, oh, those hoity-toity writers, you know, there's also artists that way. Or especially if you go to art school or some art classes, and they'll be like, oh, it must follow all the fundamentals perfectly, and you have to have this perspective, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I've seen really cool art that's like super abstract that had my attention, and I just stayed there staring at it, studying it or whatever. And it didn't follow any of those fundamentals, you know what I mean? So I guess what I want to start with is playing around with colors, like using complementary colors. You could use like contrasting colors, because I think sometimes instead of having complementary colors that go together, be next to each other all the time, sometimes to grab the viewer's attention, you could use like completely opposite, contrasting colors. I don't know. I'm trying to think on the top of my head. I can't right now.
Yeah, well, and the idea is that you are trying to draw focus to what you want the audience to look at.
Yeah.
So it's a little different in writing. It's about hooking someone so they could potentially spend, an hour to many, many hours reading this. Whereas a painting, you're really just trying to get a snap attention grabber to pull them in so they'll spend anywhere from 10 seconds to, a minute.
Yeah, exactly.
Tops looking at painting. So it's more about, first of all, just grabbing the attention and then grabbing the attention to certain points that you want them to look at.
Yeah.
So if you have this painting that's of a landscape and there's this person standing in the foreground, if you want to draw attention to that person, then maybe you do, like, all of the colors in the background are muted and they're bright yellow. That's like an extreme example.
Yeah.
But that's just to emphasize the point is, like, if you want them to look somewhere, you need to have it be brighter.
Yeah.
Or darker.
Like having some
like
kind
if you
of...
had the whole background bright yellow and he was black.
Yeah.
Just a black silhouette.
Just making that person stick out.
Yeah, exactly.
More,
then you would look at it because it's so different from everything else.
Yeah.
And obviously there's a quote unquote subtlety to the emphasis, because, like, you don't want to make it so extreme when everything you do that is just, like, too much.
Yeah, I guess emphasis is a good word,
yeah.
like with focal points or whatever, because honestly, like when I'm doing my paintings, my landscapes or whatever, I don't even think about what the focal point is, and I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but like with the landscape one, the one I did recently, it was of the Channel Islands, the rocks, I wasn't even like thinking, oh, what do I want my viewer to focus on? I'm just like, I'm going to paint a landscape and I'm going to use blue and brown. But what I wanted, I guess, the viewer to really focus on were the details of it. Because really it's just the rocks and the water and the sky. And the water and the sky were like the same colors. And the rocks were the only thing that I guess was like popping out of it. But what I wanted the viewer to focus on were the lines of that painting. So, like maybe, I don't know, I guess my picture is like on the Facebook page.
Well, we'll have it on the post as well.
Yeah, but I guess what my focus was and what I wanted the attention to be like on were like the swirly lines on the rocks and then the swirly lines in the sky. But even though they're the same exact kind of like wavy lines that I used or the technique I used with the brush, you could still differentiate the sky between the water and the rocks.
Right.
So, or like with another painting I'm doing, I guess what I wanted the viewer to focus on were the colors, like the bright colors of the buildings. So even though there's not just one building, there's like so many buildings, but it's like, what's the word? Like it pops out more than the background.
Yeah.
Because the background's just like blue.
I think
it's just
that
dark.
goes back to the contrast.
Yeah, back to what you were saying about like how the background is like, it's blue, but the building is like in front of it where the really bright ones.
Yeah, they're bright
and
red
that's what
and
the focus
yellow
is on.
and all that.
Yeah, and it's funny because I'm like not really planning that. I'm just kind of like, oh, I want the buildings to be bright.
Well, yeah, sometimes you intuit
Yeah.
based on things you've learned from art classes, or you just intuit based on like your brain knows what'll look good because you're an artist.
Yeah. So I don't know if, like, kind of going back to with the writing, if writers plan their hook more, or maybe like if you plan your hook more than I plan my hook. If that makes sense. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't even plan the hook. I'm just like painting.
Yeah.
But I feel like with
you
writers, it takes, you guys have to really study like, oh, I want my hook to start out like this. I want it to be this. Whereas me, I'm just painting. I don't know if that's
honestly,
just me.
sometimes the hook is just that's where the story idea started. Like each house in yellow is red. I think I just wrote that down and then create a story around it.
Oh.
So, but other ones, I come up with the plot.
Yeah.
And then the characters, and then the opening sentence.
I guess it's the same with
So,
some of the, like...
With art, there's no hard, fast rule. Like, this is the way to do it. It's like every project I've done that's been a little bit different, because I get inspired in a different way. Yeah,
I was just going to say that, like, I guess some paintings I do plan more than other ones. Like, I'll even do so many different rough sketches. I'll do, like, a little mock painting in my journal before I actually put it all there.
Right.
Whereas,
exactly.
like, other ones, I'm like, okay, I already know what I'm doing, or I have a reference or something. It's done for me. I'm just going to start.
Exactly. So going off the shapes you were talking about, another way to draw the attention is using lines that all kind of intersect in a certain area. And I feel like this can probably apply a little more to abstract art than, like if you're doing a landscape. I don't know how feasible it would be to make a fairly realistic looking landscape that also had intersecting lines at a point. But you could probably do something. But I think it's more for abstract art, where if you're trying to draw them in, you kind of have all the lines going to one point, and then the audience will naturally look there towards that focal point. So again, it's like there's different ways you use contrast and colors, you use intersecting lines to pull the audience's attention to a specific spot. Because if you just give them a big painting with nothing specific to look at, then they'll probably move on.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like with yours, you're talking about like the sky, the rock, and the ocean are the three focal points. Mm-hmm. You probably start at the rock, then you look at the sky, then the water, or something along those lines. So yeah, that's another way to do it. So we're going to have some articles on the blog. If you go to mokosayscreate.com, we will have a blog post with this episode, and on there we'll have links to articles about how to write the hook, and then also how emphasis and focal points work in art. So you can, I feel like especially for the art side, you kind of need that article to have the examples. Because there's only so much we can do talking about colors.
Yeah, because it's more visual.
Right, exactly.
Sure.
So we'll link out to some of those articles we were researching on to give you a little more visual information to work with, because I feel like that'll be a little more effective for you. So yeah, again, that's mokosayscreate.com, and then look for the episode 3 post, and we will have all of it on there. And then we'll have some of Monica's art on there as well. That beautiful stuff.
Well, thank you. Well, at least like the ocean one, because then if they saw that, they would understand what I was saying, or what I was talking about.
The ocean one and the city one with the buildings.
Yeah.
We'll put those two.
That was
since
not
we
done
referenced.
yet, but yeah.
They can get a sneak peek.
Yeah,
an early
there you go. Yeah, one thing I was thinking about, like, in the brainstorming process, I know we kind of, like, closed on what we were discussing, but this is a little bit off subject. Because we're all about creating. Because I'm a musician, for those of you who don't know, which I'm sure they do. I don't know. And I'm not a composer at all, but I was trying to think, like, how do musicians, like, grab attention? And I was thinking back, I don't know if this still applies today, because you could just easily listen to music without even seeing, like, the cover art of the album, or, like, seeing the artist's, like, their appearance, their style. You just listen to a song and that's it. Yeah. And whether it has your attention, whether it's your style, whatever. But, like, one thing that, at least growing up with me, that caught my attention with music was the album art all the time. Like, if it popped out, if it had, like, cool contrasting colors, whatever, it caught my attention. I'm like, I want to listen to this. I was just curious, like, did that ever happen with you?
Yeah, definitely. Like, I mean, they always say don't judge a book by its cover.
Yeah.
But we totally do every day. If a book looks like a self-published book where it's like it's a black page with just like white text on it, that's like Comic Sans, I'm probably not going to read your book. Yeah. And the same goes with album art. Like, I've done that so many times where I'm scrolling through like, oh wow. I mean, half the time I don't like the music. Mm-hmm.
I feel like people have given up on album art, though. They just, like, have the artist's picture, their face, like, profile or whatever, and that's it. It's like, no, like, be creative. Even though nobody's going to buy an album anymore. Like, at least, don't you want to see that cute, like, cool thumbnail on Spotify?
Exactly.
Of this cool design that somebody worked so hard with? But, I was like...
No, that's true. Yeah. But it's kind of outside the artist's control. Most of the time, their label...
Yeah.
It's going to make the artwork unless they're independent. Then they can be more creative with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
all right, so let's move into what inspired us this week.
What was our inspiration?
Yeah, and this week it happens we both picked albums.
I know, that's
albums
so funny.
That inspired us. So, and we'll link to these on the blog as well. Yeah. Like, basically, anything we talk about that you might be interested in checking out, we'll just have all of it on there. So why don't you present yours first?
Oh, okay. I don't know what the accent that was. So for mine is an album that I recently discovered. It's a Norwegian band called Team Me. Like
Very
Team
millennial.
Me.
Team Me.
Millennial. Yeah. And I did a little bit of research on the band because I wanted to see if they were still around. And they actually broke up like 3 years ago.
Oh, bummer.
Yeah, they only had 2 albums. And this one was one of their albums called Blind as Night. And I was listening to this as I was painting. We discovered their song. You added their song on one of our playlists that we share, the Norway playlist.
Yeah.
And I fell in love with that awesome song. So I looked into the band more and I listened to the full album where that song came from. And I painted with it last weekend. And I was so into the whole album. So that whole album just like really helped me get into the Norway painting that I'm doing. Because,
Right.
I mean, you know,
Perfect.
Norway band, Norway painting. I mean, come on. You see the connection?
I see it.
But the reason I loved it is it's more like alternative indie, which is, you know, my kind of style of music.
Yeah.
But one of their songs like took me back to when I was in Norway. And it reminded me of Aha, which is another Norwegian band. Like I forget the name of the song. I should look it up. But the rhythm of the song sounds just like the Take On Me rhythm by Aha. And I'm like, oh, did they do this on purpose? This sounds like Take On Me. But anyway, it was just really nice to listen to as I was painting the Norwegian painting.
Nice. That's
So that was my inspiration. Team Me.
Team Me.
Team Me. Blind as Night.
And mine is The Sticks by Mother Mother.
The Sticks.
The Sticks. It's an album. What's interesting about this one, I mean, it's both of ours, like one of our favorite bands.
Yeah.
And this album in particular is kind of different from other ones. It's a concept album, which they don't usually do. For those who don't know, a concept album is the whole album is centered around a theme and often has like almost like a storyline, like a through line through the whole album. Whereas your typical album, it's just a collection of singles that are just sort of unrelated.
I wonder if the one I was talking about is a concept album.
I wonder.
That makes sense.
So this one is sort of about giving up on society, being fed up with society, and like wanting to like go out in the woods and just like live off the land and get away from everyone.
Yeah.
And it sort of just builds on this like fever pitch about being fed up with society that is just really interesting. And their style is very sarcastic and very like tongue in cheek and funny. But yeah, he's talking about like going in the woods and like making friends with like the Wiccan people in the woods and stuff. It's like, it's so weird, especially for them.
Yeah.
'Cause they're sort of like rock pop, maybe like a little bit of like,
They're pretty like hard, not hard, but like heavy rock.
some of it. I mean,
Some of it.
Yeah,
Oh,
some
yeah.
of their really
Well, this
old stuff
album-
is like more like acoustic,
Yeah.
like almost folksy music. So they have a pretty good variety.
You're right.
But this album in particular, Sticks, is kind of when they were getting a little heavier. But even this one, like one of the songs has like, not a banjo, but like it's definitely kind of earthy.
Yeah.
Because it is about like living out in the land kind of thing. So that they kind of mesh that with a little bit of electronic sound. But I mean, this album is literally inspired a story based on one of the stories in the song. Like I didn't like copy it. I'm not saying like I'm plagiarizing their
Yeah.
thing, but it made me think down this path that launched to this other story. So that's really cool. So I feel like just every track on this album, you could like write a story based on it.
Yeah, for
It's
sure.
really interesting. So again, we'll link to that on the blog, but it's The Sticks by Mother Mother.
Yep, there you go. I think that's funny how, I don't know if you noticed the difference. Well, we always notice this difference, but you were really into the Sticks. You were talking about like how the story or the words inspired you, and I was talking about how the sounds inspired me. Mine, I have no idea what Blind as Night is even talking about because I'm not listening to the words. And you were like just explaining what the
You're
Sticks
evil.
is talking about, and I'm like, oh man, what if Blind as Night has like really bad messages? I have no idea, even though I've listened to it like 100 times.
It's like a Nazi sympathizer
Oh my
band or
gosh.
something you didn't
Yes.
even know.
I need to pay attention to these words, but I never do. I'm always listening to the song. I mean, the
It's both.
instruments.
You know,
Yeah.
and that's the thing I think with the Sticks, the lyrics and the music tie together
Yeah.
so well. Each song has a different kind of style that feeds into what it's talking about. Whereas a lot of bands, I feel like what they're singing about and what the music is conflicting.
Yeah.
Whereas this one, they work so well together.
Yeah.
All right, so now that we know what inspires us for the week, let's talk about what we're working on. Let's check in.
Check in.
This is a little bit of, what's it called? Where we get accountability.
Accountability, yeah.
Accountability, everyone. If you want to tell us what you're working on, you can send us an email at mocosayscreate@gmail.com.
Yeah.
And just let us know, and then we might mention you and be like, hey, they're working on this. And
Yeah.
good job, buddy.
Yeah.
Keep working on it.
Yeah, we'd love to share what the listeners are working on also.
Yeah.
You want to start?
Yeah, I'll start, since you did your music first.
Oh.
So right now I am revising my young adult sci-fi novel. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to get that ready for Pitch Wars. So we'll see if that happens or not.
Yeah, do it.
Pitch Wars is basically get to pitch it to people, and they become your mentor and kind of give you feedback to revise it to then pass it off to agents. So I just need to do some polishing, do some sprucing,
some sprucing
some
up.
trimming, some trimming, some plumping. Is that what it's called when you add stuff to your novel?
Plumping?
Yeah. That's the technical term for adding things to your novel. It's called plumping.
Yeah.
Great. Now people are going to look that up on what's it called?
How to plump your novel.
Ugh.
On
look
what's it
that
called?
up on Urban Dictionary, and it's going to be something
Oh my
very
gosh.
offensive.
Don't
or something.
look it up
I'm going to have
there.
to bleep it out now.
Yeah.
No idea.
Don't do that.
Don't do it. Don't Google it.
Yeah, that program is really cool.
Yeah.
And I am in the midst of, working a lot with my other jobs, but in between that, just experimenting more in my oil painting, and just art in general, like drawing, illustrating, because when you're painting canvases, it takes hours of work. And so I'm not able to put as many hours into it, but journals are much smaller and way more encouraging for artists on the go.
Yeah.
So I've been doing a lot of portraits lately, just faces of, what are they called? Popular people, celebrities.
Popular people. Celebs.
Or just, faces of people I know, friends, and maybe Corey. I don't know. Maybe I've drawn Corey a few times. Maybe.
Yeah, like 5 times.
And so just having fun with drawing faces. I used to do that. Bleh. I used to do that growing up, and I'm trying to get back into it, just trying to hone my skills into more figure drawing. So kind of just experimenting with that lately. No really big projects or deadlines for me, aside from finishing one of the Norway paintings.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's been too long. Get it done.
I have a goal to finish it before September, so.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we'll check in on the September episode, and we'll be like, okay, Monica,
Oh,
what
boy.
did you do? Did you finish it?
I'm going to finish it. I will.
Yeah, she's going to do it.
I
That's
will.
right. You have to. There will be consequences if
No.
you don't. That's right.
No. I'm being lectured to again.
Yeah. She's being lectured. Oh, no. All right, so now let's move into our monthly challenge. So we talk about this each week, and basically there's one challenge for the month, and this one is due on August the 29th of this year.
29.
So if it's due then, meaning if you want to send it in, we can read parts of it, talk about people's stories, and what we're doing is challenging everyone, painters included, musicians included, anyone creating things, write a 500-word short story. Short enough that, hey, just try it out. I'm like, I've never written anything before. Just try it, If you just sit down, come up with a simple idea, a little short story, I recommend you just do a little outline to kind of keep yourself on track so you can kind of gauge, like, okay, each section should probably take about this many words. And
Good idea.
try it out. So you can send it to us at mocosayscreate@gmail.com, and we'll take a look, Ski.
I still need to do my outline. That's a good idea. Do an outline. I still have no idea what I'm writing about.
Yeah, we'll probably work on. I'll help her a little bit. She's unfair advantage. I can help her along a little bit. You other painters are on your own.
I'm going to do it by myself.
Oh,
no,
wow.
No, I don't know. Maybe I'll ask you for help.
Nice.
Yeah, but I'm excited for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So we do have our official website set up now.
Yeah.
It's mocosayscreate.com.
Go check it out.
Check it out. And then from there, we have blogs where we have all links for each episode. But then on top of that, we have links to all of our social networks, to how to subscribe to us. If you're listening, you're probably subscribed. But if you're not, You better go on there and
Go
subscribe
ahead.
somewhere.
Yeah, learn with us.
Come on,
Get
man.
inspired with us.
Yeah.
It's not going to hurt. We don't bite. Well, okay.
Too hard. We don't bite very hard. We just
Well,
bite
even
softly.
if we do bite, we can't really bite you because we're just listening to you. Mm-hmm. So
That's right.
you're safe.
Yeah, there's no way we can bite you through a podcast.
You're safe. Yeah.
You're safe. There's no way that could happen, right?
Right.
Yeah. You're safe.
Yep. Well, thanks for the discussion, Corey.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, it was cool to see the perspective from the writer, like learn more about the writer's hook, and see like how much work it can take.
Exactly.
I think anything really takes work.
I learned about some painting, so we had a little exchange. We
Yeah.
had a little,
I
I'm
lectured
doing
you,
the,
you lectured me.
Exactly. I'm doing the little hand motion from the Gravity Falls, the little hand wave thing.
That Maple does.
Yeah. Maybe I'll do a gif of Monica doing that little hand motion in the blog post
Good
for
idea,
funsies.
good idea. Well, thanks for joining us again, and we'll talk to you next time.
And until next time,
Moko says create.